It's I, Wacky Anime What Ifs. I'm gonna do What If Subaru had Bendy with him. Okay, when Subaru was a kid, he loved the Bendy cartoons. He really loved it. And since when he started growing up, he idolized Bendy. Everyone kept on bullying him in this universe. Like this version, everyone bullied Subaru. He was more of a loner. Not really a one for attention. He just kept on, watching Bendy. And he actually knew the creator of Bendy, who decided to discontinue the show. He asked for permission to actually continue the show. So he wanted to animate it and stuff. And the creator basically didn't care about the show anymore, so decided, you know what, I might as well just go ahead and pawn it off for a few bucks. So Subaru bought the show and all the character rights for about $100, which is pretty much a steal in his area. So he continued the show, and unknown to him, Bendy was alive. And he was literally looking through all the TV screens in his house. Like, let's say he's in the living room, he's making designs for Bendy and stuff. Bendy flicks himself on the TV. He's on the TV just staring at Subaru everywhere, on any electronic. Just watching how he's not abandoning him, and he's continuously progressing. So, Bendy's always with him, and sometimes he just transports himself into his phone. He had a printer one day. He bought a cheap printer. It was like an ink machine. Most of the ink machines were, discontinued, but he found one, so he decided to try to go ahead and put his actual copies of Bendy in it for the next show he was going to animate. And Bendy is very popular because Subaru made it very popular, had plushies and all that stuff. So everyone basically idolizes, every kid idolizes Bendy. A lot of people just like Bendy in general. And yeah, when he puts his copies of Bendy into the actual machine, he always leaves it and, gets the perfect copies of them. And, just posts it into the show. Like the design arts, all that stuff after he animates everything. It's pretty nice. He always ended up getting attention, though he didn't really care for the attention. He cared more for the characters. So he was always still alone, but people would try to talk to him. He just really ignored them, to be honest. Like, anyone that got near him, he pretty much ignored. He always just spent time with, his drawings. And he always wondered if Bendy was real, would he be able to befriend Bendy? He always idolized Bendy even more when he was growing up. So when he was about 18, he one day, went up to the copy machine and placed the actual drawings in. And he was about to copy it, but apparently there was a thunderstorm. And it was the worst timing, because when the storm started rolling, he was about to unplug the machine so it didn't get fried, but as soon as he was about to do that, electricity surged through the machine. It was already shocked, like his house was shocked by lightning. And literally, the ink out of the machine kept on exploding everywhere. Then all of a sudden, it was all over the walls, all over the floor in his house. And then it all started to literally go up into one little lump. It all started, slowly going to one lump and started forming Bendy. Slowly forming something. And then he saw it was Bendy, and Subaru immediately, without any, hesitation, hugged Bendy. Which Bendy was kind of shocked, because he thought, Subaru would kind of be surprised about this. He was surprised, it's just he was more happy, because he figured he could actually ask Bendy to be friends. So he asked, could he be Bendy's friend? And Bendy was like, you were always my friend. And that made Subaru smile a bit. So they, hung out and stuff for a little bit. And then he always, talked to Bendy when he got home. So he decided to, continuously talk to him. And Bendy ended up saying that he's actually fading now because, well, the ink machine was the only thing, keeping him alive, but it broke down about a few months after the incident. So he was quite sad, and he asked Bendy if there was anything that he could do. And Bendy said, "Why, yes, there is. I could fuse with you, and I'll be inside your body, and I can speak to you, and come out whenever." And he said, "But you wouldn't really have any alone time with yourself. I'd always be there with you. You wouldn't really have any privacy." And then Subaru was like, "I don't care about privacy, I care more about my friends. So I'm just going to go ahead and agree to this." And he literally just says, "Bendy, you're pretty much like family to me." Which Bendy starts to actually have like a little ink tear and said, "Aww." That's a nice thing to say. So he goes in and hugs Bendy. Bendy literally just molds into him, and Bendy just goes through his bloodstream and just disappears. Yeah. So he's bonded with Subaru, kind of like how Venom would bond with someone. Similar to that. And he was really excited. Because Bendy was like in his mind and he could like talk to him whenever now. So he always ends up, talking in his head. And whenever he actually, was about to laugh, he accidentally laughed out loud a few times. Especially when he was in the subway and like Bendy told the joke. And he laughed out loud. It would sound maniacal to everyone. They were like, "What the fuck is that guy's problem? I think that we might need to get a mental asylum for him." Because he wouldn't stop laughing. And then he realized he was just in a subway, and he was like, oh, fuck. And after everyone, like, stared at him, he, like, left the subway. He, started walking down the streets and stuff, just to get to this one store he knew, that was, like, next to his high school. It was this little convenience store. He went up towards it, and looked inside. He really didn't see anything of interest until he saw this one little antique, printer. It was like a mini one, like about the size of a palm. He thought it was cute, so he decided to buy it. It costed 1,000 yen, and he was like, "That's pretty pricey for a little printer." And antique guy was like, "Well, it is an antique in its own right." So he went ahead and just, got him to buy it. And after Subaru left, he was very relieved that that thing was out of the shop. Because it printed stuff out a lot. Whenever someone thought about something and touched it, it printed it out. And he was freaked out by it. So Subaru just puts that in his pocket. Decides he's pretty hungry, so he just decides to, walk around in Tokyo. Because he lives in Tokyo now. I don't know if he did in the anime. But in Tokyo, he decides to go to the main, the main area of Tokyo. I don't know where that is exactly. But there's a convenience store there. So he decides to go to the crossroads, wait till the light goes green. Just walks through. And goes to the convenience store. And all of a sudden, Bendy and Subaru, after they, got some potato chips, ramen, and some black licorice, because Bendy likes black licorice. Like, he comes out of Subaru and starts eating black licorice a lot, mostly because it reminds him of ink. Which, if you've ever tasted black licorice, that does not taste good. It really doesn't. So, yeah, he, is talking to Bendy in his head while he bought all of that. All of a sudden, he hears a scream, and he's like, "What was that?" And it's like going in and out. And he swears it was himself. And he's like, what the fuck is this? And he just decides to ignore it, so does Bendy, because they were already in their conversation. They walk outside, and Subaru, like, has some, like, really itchy eye. because he didn't blink in a while. So he blinks once and he's in another world. And Bendy and Subaru are both excited because they're like, yeah, we're gonna be the anime protagonists. And they're like, Subaru starts doing some Michael Jackson dance moves. And then Bendy's like, stop making a fool of yourself. You're in public. And everyone's like looking at him. And yeah, they don't know what those dance moves are, but they actually start cheering because those are actually pretty good, is what they thought. So, like, he starts doing a break dance and stuff. Everyone like starts throwing like coins and stuff, gives him money, and he was like, "Oh wow, I might have went overboard. Didn't realize I started dancing." So he picked up all the money. He was like, "Well, at least I have money now." And he already knows this is an Isekai world, so he decides to, explore. So he starts exploring. He ends up seeing this one restroom, and he's like, I actually got to use the restroom. He goes in the female one by accident with all the furries, and then he's like, oh, this ain't good. And then Bendy's like, we need to take Mr. Joestar's advice. We need to fucking Nigarandeo. If you haven't seen JoJo's, that's what he says. Yeah, so he just starts bolting off, and they're chasing him, and he's like, I'm fast as fuck, boy! He literally screams that, and he's running through the main street, and he turns into an alley, and he hides beside the wall, and they all start running past him, and he's like, I'm finally safe. And then all of a sudden these three guys, fucking, appear out of the corner and look at him. They're like, you done fucked up. You're in this dark ass corner. We're about to fuck your ass up. And it's the corner right next to the apple guy, basically. And he's like very pissed off because he just got out of one problem, got into a bigger problem. So they're trying to stab Subaru because they're like, yeah, we need all the stuff you own, and we need your life. Because they ain't like the other ones. You can give them everything, they're still gonna kill you because they don't want no witnesses. So the blue hair guy pulls out the knives, like those actual knife sword things, machetes basically. Yeah, he starts charging at Subaru, and Subaru literally looks really bored. And he's like, why are you so bored? I'm about to kill you. Like literally stabs Subaru, and then Subaru's like, oh no, that hurts so bad. And then he's like, yeah, I bet it did. And then once he pulled out the sword, he literally just put his hand on the actual wound, and then just took it off, and he's like, oh yeah, it's not there anymore. And ink started coming out, and it healed it. Subaru's body can basically turn into ink, if he wants. Yeah, so that didn't do shit against him. The only way to actually, mess him up is really just to either freeze him and shatter it, or really just to, burn him, with very hot flames. So, yeah, the blue-haired guy is really freaked out. I don't know what their names are, so I'm gonna name him Zach. Okay, Zach's really freaked out, and then yeah, he starts saying, "What the fuck are you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna show you what I am." And then he literally in his head says, "All right, Bendy, let's be cool anime protagonists. Come on." And then he's like, "All right, I'll turn you into partial me." So all of a sudden, ink surrounds Subaru, and a suit appears on him. He has these little horns on his head. He has a little tail that comes out, and then his eyes literally are completely black with silver pupils. And then ink is coming out of his eyes. And then he says, I'm the dancing demon. And then they're all freaked out because no one has seen something like this. And they're very scared. And then he's like, doesn't matter, we can just still beat you. So he goes up towards them, and literally Subaru, all he does is just fucking makes an ink chair and bonks him in the head. He just bonks him in the head with an ink chair. And then it breaks. And yeah, the guy's already knocked out. Then the short guy, which I'm just gonna say his name's Zeno. So Zeno literally says, Big Bob, because the big guy, his name is Big Bobby. If you don't get why I call him Big Bobby, just, yeah. I just did it because. So, Zeno says, hey, Big Bobby, go after that kid. So he tries to punch him and stuff, and then he, starts dodging. And then Subaru decides to play a little prank, and lets one of them hit him. And then he literally turns his head into ink, and it makes it splatter behind him. And then Bobby's like, I didn't know I was this strong. And then the body falls down to Subaru. And they're like, yeah, we did it. Let's go ahead and drag Zack. So they're about to drag Zack, and all of a sudden, Subaru's head reforms, and he just gets back up, and he's like, oh, you didn't think I was actually dead, did you? And then they're all like, what the fuck is that? They're like very scared. They're like shit your pants scared. Actually, one of them actually shit themselves. And the Subaru was laughing. Bendy also laughed. And then he was like, you want to see something magical? And they're like, no. He's like, well, too bad, fucktards. So he literally just pulls out a little pencil. A little pencil? Well, not a pencil, a brush, okay? A paintbrush. He literally just paints something in the air. And all of a sudden, he paints a little dragon. And then they're like, that's kind of good art. And they were doing that in their heads, but they were also wondering what the fuck he was doing, because he was doing that on the side of a wall in the alleyway. Yeah. So that little dragon just came out of the fucking wall and started biting the fuck out of them. It chased them off. They all started running, and Felt was running like through, and like she saw some of what was happening, and she was wondering in her head, what the fuck is that guy? Just literally starts parkouring, and then Bendy and Subaru see this little instigma, and they notice that that's probably stolen because of her outfit and stuff. So Subaru literally just jumps up, just like makes his legs into ink and starts stretching them upwards and yanks the instigma before she notices. And she doesn't even notice because he just sleight of hand just took the instigma. And then he just got back down. He like stretches his legs back down to the ground. And then Amelia was watching what was happening and said, did you see my instigma and how the fuck did you do all that? And then he's like, magic! He like puts up his hands like, it's magic! And then she's like, well, what type of magic? He's like, ink magic. Then she just like, face palmed herself and is like, okay. Have you seen a little girl that stole an insignia? And he's like, oh yeah, I stole it from her. Here you go. Like just tosses it to her. And then she's like, thank you. And then he says, oh yeah, do you know anywhere to stay by chance? And she's like, well, you did just help me, so I guess I can give you a place to stay. Roswell Mansion. Follow me. And then Puck comes out and looks at Subaru and is like, why do I sense something different from you? And then he's like, oh, that's probably Bendy. And Subaru already knows, about how people sense magic and stuff, because this is a fantasy world, probably. Bendy isn't magic, but he's similar. So he literally just tells Bendy to come out of him. So Subaru goes back to his original form, and literally Bendy pops out, and they're both like thinking that's adorable as hell, because it's the little Bendy that's on the side. It's the little Bendy that's right beside Subaru right there. That Bendy pops out, and they're literally like Amelia's like, can I pet him? And then Bendy's like, I wouldn't do that, darling. And then she was like, wait, is it a spirit? And why does it talk? Most spirits don't really talk. Then he's like, oh, it's not a... And then Bendy's like, puts his actual finger towards Subaru's mouth and says, don't tell them too much. And then he's like, oh, yeah, he's a spirit. And they're like, oh, okay, that was weird. And, Puck starts chatting with Bendy, and they start getting along really well. And, they start talking about stuff. And then Amelia and Subaru start talking. And he finds out that she was, like, bullied and all this stuff and neglected. All because of her race. He thought that was pretty fucked up, and he said, well, that's pretty sad. And like she was frowning, and then Subaru said, why don't you put that smile upside down? Why don't you put that frown upside down? And then literally just like puts his fingers towards her actual like cheeks and like forces the smile up and says, you look way better if you're smiling. And then she actually laughed a little about that. And they were like heading towards Roswell Mansion on a cart, which Otto was the one driving. Like they just left the city. They just walked down the streets and stuff. And Otto literally looked at Bendy and was like, I want to pet it. Like he was thinking that in his mind. While everyone else was like, getting to the Roswell Mansion. And they saw Ram, and they saw Roswell. Roswell welcomed Amelia and said, who is this fellow? And then she says, well, he's a spirit user, and he actually managed to find my insignia. Like, told them the whole situation. They were like, you're welcome here. And then he literally sensed hostility, like hidden hostility. Because he learned that from, all the years of that happening, of all the bullying and stuff that was happening to him. Like, he was neglected too, so he really, like, knew what was happening. Like, when it came to their hostility, that was just hidden, like daggers. Because he did business cooperations with other companies for Bendy. And he was like, how about you cut the shit? And then they're all, like, caught off guard. And Roswell says, what do you mean? And why are you so rude? And he's like, well, why are you having hostility but keep it hidden? He's like, if you're going to come at me like a man, not a pussy. And then literally everyone's like Roswell's like, oh, he already knows. And then he's like, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to stay here because you're probably going to try to kill me in my sleep or some shit for nothing that I've done. And I don't really think I like a prick like you. And, Ram is, like, offended because she, like, likes Roswell a lot. So she, like, walks up towards him and tries to punch him. And then he, grabs her actual hand and says, I believe in gender equality, so do not try this bullshit. And she, like, backs away a little because he actually was crushing her hand a little bit. And then he, walks up towards Roswell, puts his finger right on his little jacket, and says, how about this? You don't fuck with me, I don't fuck with you. You don't try to know me, I don't try to know you. Because if I know you're doing some type of scheme or something that involves this kid over here, looking at Amelia, because he did develop some of Bendy's actual personality, and he prefers to most people as kids, because Bendy was like an 18-something cartoon. Yeah. So Roswell was like, yeah, you can't really tell me what to do. You're just, powerless because I don't sense a single drop of magic from you. And then he's like, oh, you want to test that little theory? And then Roswell says, oh, certainly. And, like, they start brawling. Roswell literally starts throwing fireballs and stuff. And, look, Bendy and, merges with Subaru again. And then goes into his first form, which is, just the horns and tail. And the suit. Like, the ink surrounds him and turns it into that. And then he just, everyone's shocked. Like, what the fuck just happened? And then he just accelerates and turns into ink and just surrounds him. Like, just surrounds around Roswell, wrapping himself against him. And Roswell's trying to burn the ink off him. That only increases the heat, and he starts getting burned from the hot ink. And then he tries to freeze him, but Bendy, Subaru and Bendy both just, are like, yeah, we're just gonna get the fuck away from that ice. Because they, go away from the ice. And he's like, is ice your weakness? He starts firing tons of ice around the mansion. And, everything is devastated. Like, the entire yard and stuff is devastated. And, yeah. Roswell just doesn't give a fuck, because he's, a little bitch in this. Well, he was a bitch in the anime, to be honest. So, yeah, he starts, doing all this shit. And then Subaru yells like, "You're eccentric as fuck, my dude. I know you're a clown, but you should, stop clowning around." And then, yeah, like, Roswell got angry with the clown jokes because he was saying them, like, every second. And then he says, "Why don't you send out your circus of freak shows?" Literally just pointed at, Rem and Ram. Yeah. And they were pissed off, too. And Subaru was more like, "I don't give a fuck." Just literally went up towards Roswell in the ink form, manifested to human form, and beat the fuck out of him. Like, he was trying to use magic, but he really couldn't because, well, his hands were literally, grabbed and twisted. He started kicking the fuck out of him. He started big booting the motherfucker. And literally Roswell was like, "Please stop." And he's like, "No, no, no, yo ass tried to kill me. Yo ass tried to sneakily try to kill me, probably. Yeah, yo ass gonna have a few broken ribs." And, like, they're seeing all this. And Rem and Ram start to try to, like, pull Subaru off and say, like, sorry for, trying to hide the, you know, hostility and thinking about doing stuff like this. And, yeah, he was literally just, like, they tried to hold him back, they couldn't. His strength was enhanced by Bendy. And, literally, Roswell had a few broken ribs, and he was like, "Alright, I think that's enough." And Roswell was, like, crying like a little bitch. And then he said, "Alright, now I'm going to let Bendy have his fun because I got that out of my system. Now Bendy has to get it out of his system." And look, they're like, "Who's Bendy?" They're all looking. And Bendy comes out, and he appears in this form. And then he just takes off with Roswell. And, like, they're all looking at this, like, horrifyingly, like they can't move because Bendy has so much bloodlust coming out of him. He just drags Roswell into the mansion. All you hear is screaming. And, yeah, and then you just hear silence. And they all run into the mansion. And they see Roswell covered in ink. And, yeah. They see his pants were pulled down, and they see tentacles were going into his, like, ink tentacles. Going right up his ass. And then Subaru was like, "Okay, that was a little freaky. But that was well deserved. Because you tried to fuck me over. No, you get fucked over." And then Bendy was like, "That's what I was thinking." And they're looking at them like, "What the fuck do we do?" And that's where I'm going to end it off.